since we're it's been a long time since we've been together. I think maybe 3 weeks or so. But you guys have survived. And for that, I am proud. 12, 13 weeks of hearing me talk, it's a good amount to survive through. And you're here. And we've made it through chapters 1, 2, and 3. And when we began our Gita studies, I made it a disclaimer. I'm only committing to these first 3 chapters because I don't know who will survive. I don't know. I don't know if I'll survive, right? Because why? Many reasons. But one is I'm so attracted to untruth and the variety of untruth and the varieties of quick pleasures and cheap things that deep things bore me. And my life is guided away from those things. And so for us to keep each other accountable and to provide a platform for us to experience truth together, Sangha is necessary, and commitment is necessary, and dedication is necessary. And as I've said so many times, when you commit yourself to the highest goal ever, you inevitably will feel like you're failing every day in one sense, because you've chosen the highest goal, right? So we're here to encourage each other onward in that. As long as we're on the path, it's as good as being on the destination, because as long as you keep going, right? As long as you keep going and we're sincere, and the only roadblocks is our own insincerity. And that's something we can always reflect on internally. So I'll admit I feel a little underprepared today. So whatever comes out of my mouth, just tolerate it. And hopefully we get something, right? Hopefully we get something, and hopefully I'm just purified at least by your presence. But what I thought we would do in order to take the pressure off me and put it onto you is I'm going to test you and ask you questions about the first 3 chapters of Gita that we just spent 13 weeks hearing about. And I'll give a rundown because I find it appropriate. Does anyone remember all the points that we've made in the past 13 weeks? Okay, cool. So has anyone gotten enlightened since we last spoke? All right, cool. So we can revisit. We can revisit some of these points and do a do a summary study of chapters 1, 2, and 3. So we have a really powerful grasp, and we can use that as leverage to move forward chapter 4, 5, 6, which will be another undertaking in and of itself. So let's begin. There's no wrong answers. There's just more or less complete ones. And so you can blurt anything out, and there's not going to be any, reward or punishment system. We're not in school. We're just giving what we think, and then I'll try my best to say what is said here in the Gita, so that at least we can accurately understand what has been presented and be able to regurgitate it and remember it and live it accurately. Okay, so chapter 1. Question: what is the root problem of existence? As described by the Gita, what is the root problem of existence? This is the very first part of the Gita. Anybody have any question? You can just guess. You can put in the chat. You can unmute, however you want to do it.
Yeah, we think we can reach happiness.
Okay, we think we can reach happiness. Okay.
We think we are the body.
We think we are the body. Any other answers? The illusion of separation in time and place. Yeah. Okay. Anyone else? You can put in the chat, or well, I see people like looking down your notes. Damn, what my notes say. We just want to, I just want to know what you remember, right? I just want to know what we've integrated so far. If you had to give an honest answer, doubt. Oh, okay. That's an interesting answer, right? Gratification of the senses. Okay. All right. So I'm just going to give you the answer that the Gita says, right? The um the answer is ignorance. The answer is ignorance, and all of your questions relate to ignorance, right? Or all of your answers, I should say, right? Gratification of the senses, doubt. Okay, we got someone who said ignorance right after I said it. No problem. I'm gonna still give you points. I know she says she's mouthing before, but I'm just saying after just to make a little spice in the group. Um, yeah, the illusion of separation, right? So all these different things, thinking ourselves just the body, just the mind. Um, we went through this in the beginning, right? That the chapter 1 is called Arjuna Vishada Yoga. That means Arjuna's yoga of dejection. That ultimately, for so many of us, dejection or lamentation is the route through which we transcend. First, we have to see that we're powerless in order to become powerful and to access something that can empower us, that can make us empowered, right? And lamentation is generally in there, right? We generally think of the spiritual path when we're first starting out. We're like, I'm gonna look so spiritual and blissed and just look on point, right? I'm gonna take the pictures, get the cute Instagram shots, whatever, how woke I am. And then what it really looks like, right? Like those memes, sometimes like what I thought spiritual life would look like, and then what it actually looks like. And it's like us like crying and like my life's torn apart. Sometimes that is what is happening. And for Arjuna, that was certainly the case, right? He's on this battlefield. He's posed with the task of killing people who were his teachers and his family members because they have taken the route of ignorance. And without his duty as a warrior, they would destroy innocent people and they would destroy dharma and they would destroy truth. Well, you can't destroy truth, but they would basically overcome the world with with unethical behavior, right? And exploitation. And so, right, from ignorance we become attached, and from attachment comes lamentation. And so we spoke about all these different ways that ignorance manifests, or different relationships, or ignorance and its corollaries is how I phrased it in the beginning, right? So one is just avidya, which means without knowledge, right? Vidya means knowledge, means without. So the lack of awareness of the essential nature of the soul. Who am I? If I say I'm my mind, who's my? Right? If I say my body, who's my? Right? And then along with that comes asmita, which means the false ego. So the identification of the soul with my story, that I am my story. Right? Another way this manifests is raga and dvesha, right? Raga meaning attachment and dvesha meaning aversion, right? So the raga attachment means I want these things and I want to possess these things and I'll be happy. I'll be happy if insert whatever it is in the blank. And dvesha means aversion, which means I am trying to avoid something that's unpleasant, that I've deemed unpleasant. And I become frustrated and angry when my attempts for enjoyment are obstructed, when I don't get what I want. Okay. And then lastly, as part of this, we have abhinivesh, which is really the fear of non-existence. Okay. That makes us cling to the temporary body and the temporary mind and our sense of conceptions, sense of self, and all that. Okay, so that's the kind of comprehensive answer. What's the root problem of existence? The lack of awareness about our actual identity. Does that make sense so far? Another question. Next question. Why is Krishna Arjuna's chariot driver? Now we're here on the battlefield. Why is Krishna Arjuna's chariot driver? Put your answers in the chat. And Vivek, I know you know so much about these things, so I'm going to just pause you for a second. Let other people just think for a second. To serve, okay.
And
But I thought we were supposed to serve God. Why is Krishna serving Arjuna? Okay, let's see what else.
question, who is in the schema, who is Arjuna? I'm like,
Yeah, you're good. Yeah, so this is your first class and you're coming in and it's 3 chapters in. Arjuna is the warrior in this story, and Krishna is his dear friend and guide, and a few chapters in becomes Arjuna's guru and is later revealed to be God, divine. I just did a spoiler alert, but you know, it's sorry guys, I gave away maybe the premise, but yes. So let's see what else we have here. Arjuna asked him to be when he was asked to pick between Krishna's army or Krishna, right? So because Krishna is equally disposed to both armies, to both sides, he posed the question, do you want my army, which Krishna had a big army, or do you want me? But I won't fight if you pick me. And so Arjuna said, of course I pick you. And then the other side said, of course we pick your army. So it was clear. Yeah, so that's one answer. Marlena says God wants to have all roles and serve us. Yeah, absolutely. Martha says because he is Arjuna's friend. Krishna is Arjuna's guide. Yes, all true. The answer that I had, which all of those are really great answers, is because Krishna is the supreme controller. But the supreme controller is not supreme unless he can also be controlled. Right? You can't be all powerful unless there is something you cannot do, right? It's a very interesting conundrum, right? If there was something if you were unable to create something that you were unable to do, that would be a limitation, right? It doesn't make so much sense logically, right? But the kind of question is, can God make a rock that he can't lift? Yes. And then he'll lift it, right? So it's both, it's all. And so Krishna is the supreme controller, but Krishna, more than being the controller, likes to be controlled. And what is Krishna controlled by? Krishna is controlled by love. There's only one force that can make Krishna subservient, and it's love. And it's how Arjuna is controlling God himself to be his driver, which is a menial position, right? Being God's my Uber driver, right? Pick me up on his chariot. It's because of love, and that links into what Marlena was saying, that Krishna ultimately wants to experience all varieties of love, and those are expressed through the 5 rasas. So we haven't covered this yet, but essentially there's 5 rasas, which means 5 different flavors. Right? Rasa means juice, it means life, it means flavor, it means so many things, but really what it means is like the particular flavor one gets from a relationship in this context. And so I'll put these in the chat, and we'll probably touch on these more. But one is called Shanta, which really looks like Santa. So it's appropriate for this time of year. Right? You could say, yes, I'm a Shanta, right? Which really means that you're a devotee, right? You've given yourself to the divine. And December 25th, there'll be so many Shantas, Shanta Clauses, right? that are going around. Yeah. Devotees also have Shanta. So one is called Shanta. And really what this flavor of relationship tastes like is, I'm a fan, right? I'm a fan of God. I'm a fan of Krishna. but it's a distant one. Just like if you're like a fan of Justin Bieber, you might have him as your wallpaper and listen to his songs, whatever, but you're so far removed from actually knowing the person as they are and actually relating with them as they are. And it's more just like like I'm inspired and I look up to, right? So that is this mood of Shanta ras towards God, right? Like inspired. The next is called Dasya. So this is new stuff we're learning. Dasya means servant, the mood of service. I'm God's servant. Everything for Krishna. Whatever Krishna wants. Okay, we can serve in that mood of service. All of these are service, but this one is especially a mood of service, right? A mood of being Krishna's servant. So there's another level of intimacy, right? Now you're just like, Justin Bieber's manager or assistant, whatever. So there's still some removal there of the intimacy, but it's a bit more intimate than just being a distant fan. The next is called Sakya. Okay, so this means friend, that I see Krishna as a friend, right? The guise of God as the supreme judge is gone. I don't see Krishna in that way, right? And that Krishna is my friend. We play, we laugh, we joke. Sometimes we wrestle and I win. Krishna lets me win. And the winner has to ride on the other person's shoulders, right? So sometimes Krishna lets himself get defeated. Because how much intimacy can there be if everyone knows you're God? How much love can be exchanged? Very little. Everyone will be just afraid to make the wrong move, to make a mistake, to look like, there won't be intimacy there. So just the examples, there's many examples given, but one is like of a Supreme Court judge, right? When the Supreme Court judge is in the court, he is your honor and he is the law and he is justice. And, at least, metaphorically speaking, right? We know there's so many issues, but you guys get my point. Theoretically, the judge is the law and is your honor and is so respected and has been in that position for so long and has so much veneration, so much respect. But then the judge comes home and his little kid climbs on top of his back and rides him like a horse. He doesn't say your honor, he just says, Dad. Right? And his friends go out, playing, basketball with him or drinking or whatever it is, and they call him Steve, whatever. One calls him dad, one calls him my love, one calls him your honor. And so for God to be unlimited, there must be unlimited ways in which one can relate and love. And so this Sakya is a mood of friendship. Okay. Sorry, I forgot for a second. This next one is called Vatsalya. Okay, Vatsalya means the mood of parental affection. God's my child. It's a very unique thing because in Judeo-Christian traditions, God is the father. But when God is the father and you're the child, then there's a relationship of just asking for whatever you want and God just supplies whatever you want. But if God is your child, then you have to give everything for them. You have to give everything for them. Right? And so Mother Jasoda, who is the mother of Krishna, all she thinks about is Krishna. Where's my Krishna? Where is my little boy? How can I make something amazing for him and pack his lunch today? And she never cooks the same thing twice. She's always cooking something new, making something just meditating. When will he come back from school? When will he come back? And just the constant meditation. And she worries about him and his well-being and his manners. And she gets to discipline Krishna when he's naughty and he breaks butter pots and he steals stuff from the other villagers. Right? And there's a certain love that only a parent can give. And it's a flavor of love that the child can only experience through the parent. And it's such a unique flavor. And then lastly, we have what's called parakia. And this is romantic love. So Krishna is my lover. Krishna is my beloved. Right? Sufi tradition has this kind of notion as well of God being the beloved. Right? Wanting to embrace Krishna, wanting to have Krishna as your own and no one else can have him. Wanting to leave, trails of flowers, wanting to decorate oneself nicely with ornaments and mantras made from clay drawn on the body and different auspicious symbols and conch shells and make the whole meditation. How can I? And then of course there's with that the jokes and teasing and playing somebody and leading them on and the hard to get and the whole thing. Oh yes, that rascal Krishna, I'm done with him. Oh yes, he's always talking to other gopis, other girls. Okay, no problem. No problem. I forgot all about him already. Meanwhile, all they're thinking about is Krishna, right? Because they can't stop. And so there's these different moods. And so Arjuna is in the mood of friendship. Arjuna is in the mood of friendship. And friends do things for each other. What's beautiful about this arrangement that I just mapped out is that each rasa, as we go, has the benefits of the previous rasa and more, right? So dasya also has the awe and inspiration. And sakya is you get the awe and inspiration, you get to serve the person, but you also get to be their friend. Right? Vatsalya is parent, right? So they get to love this person and how amazing is my Krishna. And they get to serve the person. All they're doing is serving. Then they also, my child is my friend. My Krishna is my friend. But then also the parent. I'm also the parent. And then lover has all of these. And even, right, lovers often have some sort of sense of parental affection too. Right? The man protecting over the woman providing for, which, is just classic roles, but you get the point, right? There's some sort of wanting to care for the well-being of another in a mood of worry. I worry about them, their well-being and their health, and want to make sure they're well fed and they get good sleep and all these other things. And so in our lineage of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, this Parakiya Bhav is said to be the highest because it has all other flavors of love within it. Are you all with me? Okay, I got a few blank stares, some nods. All right, some people passed out. Like how I imagine it is like, just take a screenshot of yourself and then put it as your Zoom picture, right? So like take a screenshot of yourself in your room and then you put it as your Zoom picture so you can turn off your camera and it's like me like, right? Like it's just, you're like, just pretend that really intently listening. I know I just went on the deep end and I didn't maybe preface the concept of rasa enough, because so far we've just been in a very technical section of Gita that has nuance and there's rasa there, but one has to understand rasa a bit to then get these nuances of the friendly jabs of friendship that Krishna is taking with Arjuna, and the jokes, and when Krishna smiles at Arjuna's dejection, right? Just like a friend would. You know, your friend's kind of freaking out about something that's not worth freaking out about. Sometimes you laugh a little in your mind, right? Oh, yes, here he is. Sometimes it brings a little pleasure, right? To think, okay, here's my friend. He's being silly again with this same. And it's kind of cute, you know, it's like their flavor of struggle, their flavor of ignorance, their flavor, whatever. And it's endearing. It's endearing. It's their, own quirk. Does this make sense so far? So as as we go through our stages of development, there will be motifs, there will be themes, there will be things that attract our heart more than others when it comes to hearing about Krishna. And what we're, in an ultimate sense, encouraged to do as aspiring bhakti practitioners, if that's how you identify, is to unlock your own unique potentiality to contribute to Krishna's loving pastimes. How do you fit into the matrix of the life of Krishna? Because the reason you exist is that you have a unique contribution no one else can fill. And the only thing God's missing is what you can give. And unless we opt in to give all of ourselves, which takes immense purification and development, then we're not allowed entry into the abode where there is no violence, where there is no envy, where only pure love can flow, because there's no selfish motive. There's no trace of ignorance left. And only in such a state do we become worthy recipients of the highest forms of love and relating. We're always worthy, but one makes themselves more and more qualified the more one moves through a process to give and receive love. It is love connoisseurs. That is really what this tradition is. And there's actually a word for it. It's called a rasika, which means connoisseurs of different flavors of love. That we're all encouraged to become rasika bhaktas, meaning devotees that like relishing the nuanced flavors like a fine wine, even though I don't drink, but just the finest subtle notes of what a love tastes like. We're so used to the blunt force of lust that our senses have become dull to any of the nuance of love and the flavors that it can bring with it. Right? Just like after giving up onions and garlic for so many years, when a dish has it, that's all I taste. That's all I taste. And it's so overwhelming. I can't taste anything else. And so in the same way, we've been conditioned to these heavy flavors of sensual enjoyment that is turned away from divinity, that we have numbed ourselves to the ability to love and actually give one whole self. Where one of our acharyas, he says the fundamental problem is that we're scared to be persons. We're scared to actually be people. who can love and be loved, because it means so much. It means so much because I have to give so much of myself and just be bare. Okay, so as I semi predicted, we're hardly got through any of this review, but let's continue. Is this clear so far? I'll just go through this briefly, but there's a spiritual warriors debacle in chapter 1. And what is that debacle? Is the tension between doing what feels good and the tension between doing what's right and what's true. Choosing between what feels good or what is actually true and right and real. And sometimes those two are the same, and many times they're not. And because we're so conditioned towards what feels good, we assume that it's true and right and good. And that is the allurement. And then we're punished, not by an angry God, but by ourselves and our own decisions and the entanglement that it gives us. Right? If they're laws, then obviously you can just either obey or disobey. You're like in jail. You're like, man, why has God punished me? Well, you knew the law, right? And you didn't follow the law, right? Of course, when the laws are imperfect, then it kind of skews the equation. But when they're good laws and they're universal laws, then one should do their due diligence in aligning themselves with that law. So anyways, this kind of emotionally intense times often flood our psychophysiology into not being able to see what's true and right and use logic and reason. And we know that from studying trauma and so many other things. Of course, that's the intense side of this scale of emotionality, right? Is trauma, where the whole logical and higher thinking process shut down. But even just more so along that line, even just in the outward facing senses, I'm just attracted to the visceral pleasure of what my eyes can stimulate, what my ears can hear, what my tongue can taste. It blinds us to higher levels of awareness. And ultimately, pleasure is not in the thing, it's in the consciousness. Right? So you can try to bombard yourself with this, or you can simply become a connoisseur of consciousness and then be able to enjoy much more because you are at the source. Okay. Anybody remember Arjuna's arguments for not fighting? This was at the end of chapter 1. Why did Arjuna say there was 4 reasons? Anybody remember any of them without looking at your notes, just in the chat? Any? Everybody starts to look down, like without looking. Okay. Everyone will hate him. He didn't want to kill his family. There were no winners in his eyes. Okay. Anybody else? What were the 4 reasons Arjuna gave to not fight? Yeah, so I don't want it. I don't want the kingdom. I don't want material prosperity. So the 4 is 1, I can't see any benefit. That's verse 31. I don't see the benefit to this. Can't see any enjoyment, right? If I don't win, it means I die. It's not very enjoyable. And if I win, it means that I will be trying to enjoy a kingdom that I've gained over bloodshed. Number 3 is karma, right? I will incur sinful reaction by killing people who I've looked up to as guru and family and all these things, even if they have turned away from truth. And of course, sin again just means that which harms oneself, not a Judeo-Christian sense of sin. The 4th is the disintegration of the dynasties and destruction of the family unit, right? Because the logic here is that when you destroy a dynasty, then you destroy the family tradition. And within the family tradition, there's dharma, which is the refined sense of conduct. And then from there, when there's no real righteous kind of dharmic things in the family, then we do adharmic. We're engaged towards untruth. And from there, there's a lot of undeveloped men, and those undeveloped men hurt women. And from that, we have a lot of unwanted children, right? When all traditions have lost, when there's tons of men who are just very undeveloped because of that, then we get a population where most people, 50+% are unplanned and unwanted, which is our current situation. And then society just kind of goes downward and dharma is lost. So these were the 4 reasons. All right, let's take a deep breath in and exhale. All right, shall we continue? Yes, okay. All right, cool. So chapter 2, we'll just go through this very briefly, but as a whole summary of chapter 2, basically Krishna rebukes Arjuna's emotional outpouring. That's the first few verses. And then what happens is Arjuna gets triggered to further justify his attachments, which generally happens when we're confronted, right? You're like, did something wrong, and then someone's like, well, that wasn't very developed. And you're like, I'm going to double down on my position, right? Just a defensive propensity. So Krishna or Arjuna does that. And then the kind of existential crisis that's arises because of that, finally, Arjuna submits himself. I don't know what to do. Krishna, please help me. Right? And this is where we get the meaning of yoga in the first chapter, that ultimately Arjuna's dejection and despondency brings him to the stage of, I don't know what to do. Please help me. Right? And we describe that most people come to divinity not to actually know divinity, but to avoid pain, right? Or to have their list of things that they want taken as an order by God, right? And then basically from here, Krishna sees the flavor of ignorance that Arjuna has, and he understands that lamentation arises due to ignorance, and that ignorance arises due to identifying with the temporary body and mind. And so what he does is he begins to describe the difference between the body, mind, and soul. And that's verses 11 to 30 in chapter 2. Okay. And then after that, he talks about how to act in the world with this knowledge, right? Karma yoga. And then Arjuna finally asks, well, what does this enlightened person look like who's done karma yoga? I don't know. How would I be able to identify them? Right? How do they walk? How do they talk? How do they sit? Etc. You guys remembering this stuff? Cool. So in this guru section, my question to you, this first 10 verses is all about guru in chapter 2. My question to you is, why do we need a guru if the guru is within? What is your answer? Or maybe you think we don't. What is your answer? Put it in the chat. To stay on the right path, because as above, so below, as without, so then macro, microcosm, repeat. Okay. We're often clouded by our own ignorance and can't access the inner guru, so an external guru dispels the clouds. We need people higher than us to guide us on the path. Everybody needs a guru, even gurus need a guru. Okay. I want you guys to think deeper. Yeah, the guru helps reflect our true selves. Sure. But it doesn't answer my question, which is if the true self is already within you, why you need someone to reflect your true self? It's already there, right? It's the closest thing to you. There's many answers. I'll give some. And these are from this section of the Gita. One is that exactly what I was saying before in chapter 2 is that we are so we are so conditioned towards putting what feels good in front of dharma and what is right and what is true. And because that is our default setting, it is very hard to flex the muscle of what's true and what's right, especially because why? Well, Krishna or Arjuna asked this question later on. What is it that causes me to act out of integrity even when I know something is wrong to do? But it feels like I'm almost forced to do it. Right? And we all have this. Every single human on the planet has this experience. Knowing something's not in their best interest, knowing something's not going to have a beneficial result, and feeling drawn and compelled to do it anyway. What is it that causes that? Who can put the answer to that? To Arjuna's question. Why am I compelled to do things against my best interest, even when I know they will be not beneficial for me? Anybody remember? Krishna says, Kama Esha Krodha Esha, that it is Kama, it is ultimately lust, which is a poor translation for Kama. As we mentioned, Kama means desiring to eat the objects of these senses, right? Being faced outward for happiness, right? That happiness is in the objects of the senses, the sights, the sounds, the tastes, the smells, etc. And how another way I define kama is misguided desire. And that kama is such a heavy force acting on all of our lives that we do things that are not aligned with us all the time. Like, how different would your life be if there was a guru you really, really looked up to and respected who was actually in integrity and highly evolved living in your house with you? Like, without them saying a word, like, they're not going to shame you, they're not going to correct you, they're just there, right? You contemplating this is why we avoid guru. You're like, damn, I ain't gonna do that. It's why we avoid guru. It's why we see saints and stuff in the street and we go the long way around the sidewalk. You know, you see the Hare Krishnas jumping up and down with the free books. We go the other way. We like the prison we've made for ourselves. And Krishna says, how is this kama overcome? It's overcome by developing a higher taste. That's the only way. Cold turkey doesn't work. You can't just become desireless. You could try, but it's not the method for Kali Yuga. It's not the method for this age. As long as you are alive and you're conscious, there will be desire. It just matters which direction it's pointed in. And unless one is experiencing something higher, then they will continue to do grosser activities based in just the senses and the body. But ultimately our nature is bliss, and Krishna wants us to experience that. He just wants us to look for it in the right places. That doesn't destroy us along the way and hurt everybody along the way. That's based in violence. right? We live in a place that everything's based on violence. Every day. Every day. Just for you to, the foundation of existence here means you have to kill other living entities to survive, whether plant, animal, fungi. You have to kill in order for you to live. So we need guru, because while guru is in the heart, if the heart is weighed down by thousands of pounds and thousands of lifetimes of turning away from God, so that one can engage in violence and engage in things that are just lower pleasures, there's thousands of pounds of crust and rust on the heart, and God's sitting there. But of what use is a mirror if it has 1,000 pounds of dirt on top of it? Of what use is a radio that's transmitting beautiful vibrations if it's underneath a mountain of garbage? So that those transmissions are there, those reflections are there, but we need someone on top of this pile to begin shoveling all this stuff off of the heart with us. And we need to opt into that process. It has to be consensual. We have to give ourselves. And the more we give, it says we take one step towards Krishna, and Krishna takes 10,000 steps towards us. So Krishna wants us to experience this ecstasy of rasa so much more than we want it. And yet we rather, Prabhupada always used the word misers, which is like someone that just holds on to trinkets. You know, I think of like grandmas, like who go to garage sales and they just buy like little doodads and stuff that they're never going to use. And they have a whole amazing attic of doodads and trinkets and whatever, because there's a hole in the heart. You know, the kids are gone, there's a loneliness, there's some sadness that needs to be filled by getting trinkets. Of course, this is a generalization. You know, I love my grandmas and all their trinkets. But that we are like that in this world. We're trying to collect little trinkets instead of like the mountain of treasure, because because of what it asks of us in order to inherit it and in order to experience it and taste it. Okay, so this whole debate, or this whole Atma Tattva, or knowledge of the self and the soul, is given. You know, cannot be crushed, cannot be withered by the wind, cannot be burnt by the sun, et cetera, et cetera. And then Krishna talks about karma. Krishna talks about the Varna Dharma, right? The different, what has now turned into caste system, which used to be an empowering thing, which is now a very twisted thing, an exploitative thing. But of understanding one's own nature and the type of work one brings to the world, and having that be a method through which one can liberate themselves through working in the world while in remembrance of divinity, by actually looking at one's own nature and living in accordance with that nature, while also dedicating all results to the divine. And this is the essence of that karma yoga, that we're detached from the fruits. And that is a large part of this second chapter. And then after that, Krishna gives the description of what this person looks like. And I've spoken for enough time, so now we're at an hour and I've hardly covered 2 chapters. But I think, you know, just for us to, we introduced some new topics, and we also got to review a bit and start to think about these things. Because I think so often, I'll just speak for myself, so often I hear things and it just is entertainment. But what we're all asked to do is become contemplative about the things that we hear, and that hearing things is not free, right? I've mentioned this concept before, that hearing is not free. As soon as you hear a truth, you are now obligated to live by a higher standard. So that's why maybe half the people have dropped out from this Gita class. But it is true. It is true that hearing it shouldn't just be for entertainment. We don't just hear all these wise things and use them as Instagram quotes. And it's confronting, just personally speaking, to think about how much am I living truth. Like, well, the more I read about it, the more I see my ignorance here. The more I see how much it's worked its way into every crevice, subtly, grossly, how much lust and greed and envy and jealousy and self-centeredness and egotism has dominated how I move through my life every day. And sometimes we struggle admitting that. And I don't think we should admit it in a self-deprecating way, but in a liberating way. This is part of who I am. My lower nature is part of who I am in this body, in this life. And you come before God naked. This is all of me. The good, the bad, the ugly. Right? Sometimes we try to come with these polished prayers and look all cute before God, and this, and pray all the good prayers. And God sees the crustiness. He sees your inner nonsense. Why not be real? I need help. I'm addicted to myself. I'm addicted to my ego. Need help. And at least we can make some steps in this lifetime and just try to be genuine spiritualists instead of people who just collect cute sayings and wear a uniform and fit into a club. And have a bunch of deep truths shallowly lived. Okay, I tried my best. Any comments, questions, reflections? Martha says it's harsh reality to accept. So much needs to change and so much needs to be learned. Long ways away, but still happy to have found this path. Thank you for your love. Yeah. We need both. We need all. We need to see our own goodness and people who see our own goodness beyond our own our own ability to see it. I've had so many people like that in my life who just saw so much goodness in me that I couldn't even see. I felt so undeserving and so, it's not me. I don't know what you're saying. And we need that. We need someone to call out that highest part within us that is true and real. And then we also need someone to cut the part of us that's just not good for anyone. And like I said, a good guru understands how to cut out the false ego without cutting the heart. But it's a delicate surgery. And most of us don't want to submit ourselves to physician. First, we have to find a qualified physician. It's very rare to perform that sort of surgery. Then we have to submit ourselves to it. Anybody else? Any questions, reflections? Anything bold you want to say? Just to be real. I went to this men's retreat last weekend. There were 70 men. I'll end in a minute. There were 70 men. And the first thing they had us do was line up. And I was really wanting to avoid this. I saw it on the website and stare into this other man's eyes. And I was like, come on. I'm like, lived as a monk. I know that's not that spiritual, but I tried to like withhold my judgment. Like, okay, I'll do the thing. And it's a little awkward, but it was nice. It was nice. And they had us close our eyes and then think of our 3 highest achievements that we want to tell this person. What are the 3 things about myself I'm so proud of and so honored to tell this man in front of me? And I was like, oh, I'm about to just tell this man. I'm about to just show my glory, shine my light. And then right before I was about to speak, they say, now think of all the things you would be horrified for this man to know. And they had us share that in the first moment. And I was like, damn, I was ready. I didn't even get to share all the good stuff. I was like, damn, okay. Well, but it's so relieving. It's so liberating. Be like, here's the things I think are worst about me. Here's the things I hold the deepest shame about in my life. And it felt so freeing that the thing I fear is that people will know and then they won't love me. And the exercise shows you that you share. And that so many people have done similar things, have felt similar things. And not only that, your love for them does not decrease and their love for you does not decrease. And therefore your worst fear never comes true. But yet we live our whole life as if it will, and therefore we remain half human in fear of what being a whole human may look like. And so we had to do all these things, and we did ritual combat. I had to fight another man. I fought another man with love and respect. There's only one other man there my size, and as soon as he volunteered, I was like, okay, then now's my chance. Because there's other dudes that are like massive, like walls, and I was like, oh. And it was good. It was good. We're scared of these parts of ourselves, but they're all parts of our human nature. The fighter, the warrior, the lover, the magician, the sage, all these archetypes, they're there for a reason. Yeah, we're so afraid of what it might mean if we express our anger. What is it? What would it be like to punch a man in the face that you love and have him punch you back and love each other more after it? And that's exactly what happened. It was awesome. It's a wild concept, but anyways, I'm sharing just in service of this group. Any last thoughts, questions, comments, reflections, or one point that stood out? Andrea says, very beautiful how the rasas inform the next rasa like nesting dolls. Yeah. In our tradition, there's considered perfection, which means any of the rasas, attaining divine love in any of the rasas. There's considered more perfect, and there's considered most perfect, right? How can something be more perfect and most perfect? If it's perfect, well, it's transcendental. We don't ask these questions. There's perfect, more perfect, most perfect. Anybody? Last thing. Okay, so next week, next Monday, mark your calendars, we are starting chapter 4. We'll do our onward march through this beautiful Gita. I will be more prepared. I had a day of like 20,000 meetings today, and you guys voted on it yesterday that today's the day. I was like, damn, I was going to do a review. And then even that, I'm like not prepared and got through only 2 out of 3 chapters. But anyways, you guys are still here. So somehow we've made it. Thank you guys for your love and attention. Seriously. And I will see you next Monday. Hariom Tat Sat. Thank you guys. Bye, everyone.